Hottie, this episode, I'm going to do my very best to convince you and all of our listeners to add a single speed to your mountain biking quiver, and maybe even consider racing the Leadville 100 on a single speed.
Well, of course, I'm interested in your reasons for this idea, quotation marks, but of course, you know me, I am skeptical.
I wouldn't want to record with you if you weren't. And I'm probably not going to help my case with how this Floyd spot is going to begin. Because last Thursday on my single speed, I was going up a hard uphill single track and got to a hairpin and I just stalled. I didn't put a foot down because I'm vain. And I sort of track standed for a second, and then I slowly ground back into motion, just, really rowing with all I had in upper body, legs, everything. And I did not put a foot down, and I was proud of that. However, for nobody to see and, for no glory whatsoever, I did something to my back, and it was not a good thing.
Well, all that force has to go somewhere, and sometimes on the single speed, it is through the lower back. So how are you doing?
I'm actually doing pretty well. I'm taking it easy, giving myself a little bit of time to heal, and I'm hitting the ibuprofen pretty regularly. But the real difference maker has actually been where our presenting sponsor, Floyd's of Leadville, comes in. I've been rubbing in the Floyd's of Leadville sports cream each evening before bed and each morning after my workouts, and it has been making a remarkable difference in how I feel. It loosens me up, it helps a lot with the pain, and it also feels good. It isn't greasy like some lotions, and it smells really good.
Yeah, whether for general recovery, aches and pains, or something a little more acute like a sore back, we are real believers in Floyd's of Leadville, and our listeners can try what we're using at a good price. Head on over to floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on all your purchases.
Yeah, and right now, it's also worth going there for other things. Check out the giveaways and sales. They are really literally giving stuff away right now. And they have great prices on everything. So head on over to floydsofleadville.com, use the code FATTY for 15% off anything, and also look for the good prices and the discounts and the free stuff.
And again, thanks Floyd's of Leadville for sponsoring our show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 3, episode 19 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and of course freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty, and I am fully aware this episode we're sort of making it for me. This is the Eldon-centric episode because I love single speeding. And I don't know if you know these stats, Hottie. Out of my 23 starts and 22 finishes, I have raced the Leadville 100 7 times on a single speed, and finished it 6 times. The time I crashed out that we talked about in our big mistakes episode, that was actually on a single speed. So 22 finishes. Out of my 22 finishes, I have 6 single speed finishes. The first one was actually on a Twin 6 Waltworks collaboration, steel frame with a Mary bar. I don't know. Do you know what a Mary bar is? Have you ever heard of those?
Nah, Mary bar? What is that? It sounds like a matrimony? No.
It's actually because the bar is shaped like the letter M. So a kind of a crazy contraption. For a while, I thought it was absolutely the best thing in the world. Nowadays, I've kind of reconsidered. I got a couple in the garage if someone wants them. But I've also done on my other single speed Gary Fisher, fully rigid, once with a Marzocchi rock solid fork, once with a Niner fork. I then moved that Niner fork onto a single speed specialized stump jumper, and I then moved a SID fork onto it, and later an RS1. And I also have my very first set of the NVXC wheels, which are still, and this is something, we're not to the NV spot yet, but we may as well be. That 7-year-old set of NVXC wheels is still on that bike, and I still use it often, and they are as true, and those wheels are as good as they were 7 years ago. So just fantastic, fantastic set of wheels. And then my most recent single speed adventure was on an Ibis Tranny with a belt drive. And I love that bike, but the belt drive, I will never use one of those again. That thing was noisy.
I thought the belt drives were actually supposed to be quiet. I mean, I don't know much about them. I've never really used them. Aren't they supposed to be quieter and more reliable?
Well, it was super reliable. I never had any concerns about it breaking or anything. It was a strong belt, but a little bit of sand, a little bit of dust over the course of 100 miles starts getting in between the teeth of the belt and the belt gearing, and that makes noise. And that nobody has ever complained about my drivetrain before or since in the Leadville 100, but that year people would scatter when I came because that thing was so noisy. So yeah, I'm not a personal fan of belt drives for long endurance races in dusty environments. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Copy that. Okay, well, we'll want to spend some time talking about the how and what of single speeding, but none of that really matters unless you can convince our listeners of the why. Why would anyone want to single speed? Why would you choose that over gears?
Yeah, that really is sort of the central question of the episode, Hadi. And I posted sort of a call for questions out on Facebook a couple of days ago. And that was the most common one, is why would you want to do that? Why would you choose no gears over a wide range of gears? And I'll get to that in a second, but before we get to the main why, there are some things you learn from single speeding. And the first one, and I think this is important, is single speeding teaches you to hold your momentum. You in little dips, in run-ups to climbs, you use your brakes less often because you learn that any power that you have exerted and it has turned into momentum, if you can hold on to that, there's less work that you have to do up the line. So you become a lot more conscious about that, and you get good at it. You get good at not wasting your energy. You also learn to stand and climb, which gives you, you build power for one thing. Your legs become more powerful, stronger. You're able to turn over and, push out higher watts when you need to. And you also have a new option, a new climbing mechanism in your quiver, so to speak. It was through single speeding that I learned to do a really good upstroke. For years and years, when I was really more of a roadie type, I tried to learn to do a good upstroke as part of my pedaling cadence. Never really got it. I single speeded for a couple of years and suddenly was unconscious because you need to have a good upstroke or you're not going to crest over some climbs. And then you learn to trail read, which is you miss rocks that you don't need to hit, stuff that's going to waste energy. So you start seeing things and picking the smoothest line in a given situation because it is the thing that's going to keep you going well. But honestly, all of these are kind of secondary to the main thing I love about single speeding, and that it's fun. I mean, it's that simple. It's not as much harder as you think. You are really focused on the trail. There's a certain elegance to the way you get up and down a trail. You're budgeting your effort and you are just having a good time. The simplicity, the cleanness of it, it just adds up to a lot of fun. And then there is a vanity piece as well. Having other folks see you as you pass them on a single speed, honestly, it feels pretty good.
I think what the folks listening to the show know what they're going to hear next, and that is you and the Leadville Trail, the Race Across the Sky movie, talking about why you single speed and the grunting. Insert audio here.
This year I will be doing Leadville on a fully rigid single speed, which means that I'm going to get rattled around pretty good. it is fun to stand up and power through things. The simplicity is really, really nice. If you're on a single speed and you pass someone who is not on a single speed, you do a little bit of grunting and you row your bike a little bit so people will look at you and go, hey, you're doing that on a single speed. That's why you ride a single speed.
I want to second one thing you said, by the way, regarding upstrokes and spinning. So my single speeding experience is very narrow, very focused, very limited, and it's only on the road. But for 3 or 4 years, I had a old steel road bike set up single speed. And for a while, I was committed to riding that thing back and forth to work, which was about 35 miles round trip. And I'll have to say, that bike turned me into a very good spinner. Like my spin and my cadence got so good that when I showed up in road races and crits, I had teammates that even noticed. They're like, hey, your cadence, your spin looks really smooth right now. So for nothing else, and as far as I know, because I have very limited, obviously, exposure in this area, but your spin will improve. Now, the weird thing too, Fatty, is I've asked coaches though about, like, should I be out? I asked a couple of coaches, just survey them in general. Do you think single speeding is good for you overall as a rider? And they were kind of indifferent about it. Some thought, yeah, no, it's really good. It makes you a better rider if you hop between the two, between single speeding and gears. Other coaches were less so enthusiastic about it. Like, nah, just if you're going to ride gears, ride gears. If you're going to ride single speed, ride single speed. So doesn't seem to be a lot of consensus regarding that.
And I think that from a purely mechanical, math-oriented standpoint, they're right. The results are inconclusive at best as to whether it makes you better at everything to be a single speeder. But I am pretty sure I can say this. If you are getting tired of your normal kind of riding, or you're interested in a new challenge, if you add a single speed to a bike or convert a bike into a single speed, then you're going to discover fun. And it isn't, a lot of people see single speeders and think, oh, those are guys who are just, for one reason or another have decided to be a retro grouch or have decided to be, you make things harder than they need to be. But the reality of it is, I have so much fun. Just the smoothness, the simplicity, the sort of on-off switchness of it. You're either going or you got to get off and walk it. You don't have a bunch of options in between. It adds up to single speeding just being a ton of fun. So that is my biggest pitch for single speeding, and it multiplies out into Leadville. And I want to talk more about that in a minute. But honestly, the most memorable, most fun experiences I have had racing in Leadville are on a single speed.
Yeah.
Hadi, like most of us, you should have received your Leadville kit by now. How do you like it?
Yeah, received it. I've been wearing it. Yeah, really digging the bibs in particular. I think we made it perfectly clear last episode, in fact, that the addition of those stretchy side pockets on the thigh panels, super useful. I went for the Century Fit jersey because, these days favoring that easy breezy cut.
Yeah, I love my kit as well. I actually got myself both the race day version, the close-fitting, lightweight material version, and a Century cut version. So I get to pick. That's the nice thing about DNA, actually. They make different cuts and patterns, different materials for different styles and appreciations of riding. And still, whichever you get, still really affordable.
And they really took care of us here. T-shirts, socks, 2 kinds of jerseys, like Fatty said, bibs with those side pockets, like I said. And I don't think either of us had to do too much work, that is, to make it all happen, right?
No, not at all. They were truly a one-stop shop for us. They designed everything. They handled production and project management, and they took care of the ordering and the fulfillment, the website. And they did all this with consideration for everyone's safety at our side and at their side. They took care of everything, and it was convenient and fast. I made a couple of phone calls, exchanged some email, never really had to leave my podcast dungeon to make any of it happen.
And DNA can make it happen for you, for any kid, for any occasion, just like they did for us. They can take care of your soup to nuts, from designs to production to ordering to fulfillment. They do this year-round, and as I think anyone who ordered one of our kits can attest, DNA does amazing work.
Yeah, so if our listeners want to have their own custom gear designed, DNA is offering a 10% discount to our listeners. Just go to dnacycling.com, and in the custom apparel inquiry page, choose Other and Where Did You Hear About Us, and then type in Leadville Podcast. You're going to love the look, the fit of your custom kit.
All right, now we're going to get to the important part of single speeding, and that is the bike. The bike. And one of the other things, you were mentioning the advantages of single speeding, Fatty, and one thing that I was thinking about while we were reading the DNA stuff there is that what about regarding the advantages of single speeding? It is lack of maintenance too, right? I mean, aren't these bikes just more reliable? Like there are fewer things to go wrong on you.
There are fewer things to go wrong. I mean, you can, of course, get real sophisticated and get kind of finicky with anything, but at least a couple of times I rode Leadville, I did it with a fully rigid single speed, and there, I mean, you're down to the very bare minimum moving parts that can go wrong. Of course, your wrists might pay the price later, like mine are. I've got arthritic wrists at this point, but I will still say there are fewer things that can go wrong, and you can build an incredibly light and efficient looking bike. So here's what I have built, expecting to race in 2020. Instead, I'm going to race it in 2021. My frame is the Niner Air 9 RDO, and I should mention that Niner did provide me this frame. That doesn't matter too much. Most companies will provide me a frame, but I wanted this one. And I think our good friend Yuri Hauswald will agree. For single speeds, it's hard to do any better. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say impossible to do any better for single speed or for hardtail racing. I put in a Biocentric 30 eccentric bottom bracket in it for tensioning the chain. And apart from that, I mean, I could use the exact same frame, and at some point probably will, to be a 1x12 bike as well. And I got to say, Hottie, this is the first Niner frame I have ever had, and it is my favorite mountain bike frame I have ever had. And that's whether it's a single speed or not. I've been riding it more or less out of my quiver of bikes. The others are gathering dust. I love them, but they just aren't getting used. The Niner's the only thing I'm riding right now. And part of that is everything that goes with the frame. It's, the Shimano components, the NV wheels, all of that is great. But there is the frame itself that is the foundation and is just incredible. It is light, but that's not really the main thing. It's, they call it the RDO, which stands for Race Day Optimized, and maybe that's it. People like me, people like our listeners, love a light, fast, efficient, nimble bike. And Niner has been doing single speed hardtails for a long time. They've really got it dialed. It's kind of what they do. And finally, it's orange. At least mine is. And I love orange bikes. Orange is my favorite color. It's no mistake that the Leadville jersey this year matches my frame.
So wondering where the orange came from. I thought it was because I was a San Francisco Giants fan and you were trying to appease me. Well, I too have a Niner, actually, and mine Niner is not RDO. It is SIR for Steel is Real. But like yours, it is capable of going single speed. It has that concentric bottom bracket, huge bottom bracket shell. And Niner has this specially designed sleeve that goes in there. So as opposed to adjusting the single speed at the dropouts, you do it at the bottom bracket by turning that concentric bottom bracket and bringing chain tension in. Now, of course, I'm not running single speed right now. It is a geared bike, but it is ready to go. It's not as light as your bike. Again, steel. Currently, it is rigid, though. But again, I am on the verge of being a single speeder myself with a Niner.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'll get you out, come out to Utah, come ride some of my local stuff. I swear the Utah trails close to where I live are so single speed friendly. It'd be awesome for you and me to ride single speeds together. A couple of Niners, that'd be great. Let's talk a little bit about the XTR Shimano side of this bike, the way I've got it set up. So drivetrain, obviously brakes, pedals, all of that is Shimano XTR. And while, of course, there's no derailleur, otherwise it is a traditional XTR setup. The chain ring, the chain itself, the cranks, it's all XTR. The brakes, I will never ride with anything but XT or XTR brakes ever again in my life. Doesn't matter who I'm sponsored by. The fact is, Shimano just makes the best stuff. And you can get a couple of grams lighter with other companies, and I don't care. I got a lot of weight to lose before I worry about whether my pedals are too heavy. The fact is, they work better than just anyone else, and I love a smooth, perfect drivetrain, and their brakes too.
I want to ask a total noob question then. So regarding chain and chain ring, is there any reason to ride anything or put on anything that's any more heavy duty since there's so much stress in that area? Or have you found that, whatever is running on a geared bike as far as chain ring and chain is fine on a single speed? There's no worry about stress there?
Right. There are people who think that a bigger, heavier, old 8-speed type chain is the way to go. You know what I'm riding with is an XTR chain. When the last time I broke a chain was? Like more than 10 years ago. The fact is, the modern chains, and in particular Shimano chains, are just incredibly well engineered, and they can handle any load that any human can put out. They are way stronger than we are. I have no concerns about that.
Yeah, and as our buddy Josh Portner over at Silka pointed out recently, the XTR chain, now, is that the 12-speed or the 11-speed chain? I mean, that's essentially the Dura-Ace chain, right?
Yep, 12-speed chain. The XTR chain is the Dura-Ace chain.
Yeah, well, as our buddy Josh Portner pointed out, regarding chain drag, Shimano is doing a top-notch job when as far as chain efficiency goes. And again, like on any bike, but I think in particular single speed, you want efficiency. You want that thing to give you everything you're putting out because you only got one gear, and you want to make the most of that, right? So,
yep.
And brakes, well, so with the brakes, you go with your standard rotor size, nothing crazy there. I mean, obviously you have less weight, so you don't need as much braking power.
Oh yeah, the 160 in the back, 180 in the front, and that takes good care of me. I don't need anything beyond that. And the one thing that is a little bit unusual, I guess, up front, you could say, is my Cannondale Lefty Ocho, which I originally got kind of for the novelty, because since it uses the standard tapered tube, you can put it on any bike, not just on Cannondales now, but it's also a really light fork. And because it is inverted, that is, the oil is down at the bottom, gravity helps keep the stiction low. And also because it is just one side of the fork, you could say, it is really fast and easy if you need to make a tube change. And the thing looks great.
You mean tube change? You mean tire tube change? I'm not following that. Yep. Or stanchion tube.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. If you get a flat, you just go ahead and, zip around on one side, pull out the tube and put another one in. You never had to take the wheel off the bike, which is kind of nice. So I'm enjoying it. I'm not 1,000% sold on the Ocho. I've been using an RS1, SRAM RS1, I guess RockShox RS1 fork for a long time. Since it has the inverted stanchions, I have liked that and have thought it's a really plush fork. But I'm getting a lot of the same benefit with the Lefty Ocho. So I'm going to give that a year and see if I love it. And so far, good things to say. Speaking
of forks, have you sworn off rigid at this point? I mean, is that just part of the picture? Okay.
I will never use, and this is, no knock on rigid. As a younger man, I was a big fan of rigid. And I loved that it made it so that climbing was easier and there was a directness to it. And I thought it was awesome. But now, boy, my wrist just can't take it. 2 hours with a rigid fork and I am beat and I am hurt and I am not going to do that ever again. I need suspension up front. So there's, in addition to the drivetrain, the of course the fork, the wheels are, I would say, incredibly important. And of course, I'm using NV M525s on that. I think at this point, between Lisa and me, we have 4 sets of M525s in the house. They're just the best wheel for this kind of riding. I'm also using an NV 300 millimeter seat post with a 25 millimeter offset. I like to ride a little bit further back than some people do. And 100 millimeter stem, which is nice because I like to be a little bit far forward when I am doing my standing pedaling. But you know what has been the real revelation for me this year, Hadi, has been the bar. You and I have talked a million times in this show about what used to be called the sweep bar, SWP bar, and is now called the M5. But on this bike, I have put the M6 bar, and I actually picked the version that was not flat, but rather with a little bit of a rise. So it is a 780 millimeter bar, which I have not cut down. And I've got a little bit of rise with this thing. With it being so wide, I have incredible leverage and I can just row this thing. I am getting up stuff that I was not getting up before because I can, a little bit further out to the left and right with my hands, and you can really power up stuff. And with a little bit of rise, it means when I'm standing, I am not having to bend over quite as much, which is nice when you're old. And I am just, I am loving this thing. It is just fantastic. Have you ever tried a bar this wide?
Yes, I have. My M5s are that wide right now. I think when I first did Leadville, I was on 600s. You were probably on something narrower back in the 90s, right? I was on, I think, 600 the first time I did Leadville, maybe 580s. I can't remember for sure. I eventually graduated to some like 700 MVs, but now I'm on the 780s and just love them. I just assume shorten my stem now and bring those bars out wider for mountain biking. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, for folks who are living in tree-lined areas and they're really trying to make the squeeze through stuff. But I think otherwise, especially for folks out west here who have more wide open spaces, I mean, man, the 780 is terrific. Now, you mentioned the wheels again, the M5 25. How's that hub set up, by the way? Do you have a single speed specific hub? Have you got spacers on a normal hub? How do you have that set up?
Spacers on a normal hub, and that's intentional because with this Niner, it's easily convertible between being a single speed and a geared bike. And I wanted the wheel to be like that as well. I didn't want to have to change out hubs. So with some spacers there, I could easily put a cassette on. I actually have the hanger set up so that it could accommodate a derailleur. And, without a ton of work and without a ton of new parts, I could make this into a geared bike. So yeah, I went with it's a Industry 9 Hydra is in the back, and of course up front, it's a special hub for the Lefty Ojo.
Yeah, my SR9 is similarly set up. Like I can change the dropouts or the right side dropout, so it's like a single speed dropout. There's no hanger to it, and set mine up single speed like that too. So regarding moving that between geared and non-geared, what about chain line? I know chain line can be very important for single speeders. How do you ensure that your chain line is in check there?
Okay, so I'm going to be 100% honest and say that I absolutely outsourced that question. We've had my good friend and mechanic for 2 decades now. Racer Jared Gibson has been the guy who built this bike up, and I just gave him all of the parts and said, build this up for me, Racer, and he puts in the correct spacers in the correct way. And the chain line is perfect. So honestly, if Racer were here, I'd have you talk to him on that. I'm a terrible mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're not terrible. You just know when to outsource.
Terrible.
Well, this is a good jumping off point then to talk about gearing, right? So we've got our XTR front chain ring, and we've got our single speed set up. So give us a little primer here on how to choose the right cog.
Okay, well, I will try. So up front, I have a 34, and I think that is the smart way to go. Now, and we've referred to Josh a couple of times already in this episode, but I'm going to do it again. Something I learned from him just in the Marginal Gains podcast is you want to have the biggest gears, meaning physically the largest diameter gears, both front and back as possible, so that your chain has less bending to do. There's less wasted energy when you can. So starting with a 34 as opposed to a 32 or even a 30 means that my chain is going to bend less up front. Doing the same, and you want to, at the same time, you don't want to have something so tiny in the back that you're dying. I found for myself 34 in the front. About 20 is where I am right now. I can change that to a 19 if I want, but I am at a 34-20. That is a pretty hard gear. That is a tougher single speed gear than most people ride. Lisa on her single speed rides with a 32 in the front and a 20. Now, of course, that's a little bit of a tighter, that's a tighter bend for the chain. But if you can't turn the pedals, it doesn't matter whether it's more efficient, right? 32-20s are really common. The lowest gear I would recommend, though, for anyone who is single speeding and wants to think about Leadville is a 32x22. I think that after that, you're going to find yourself spun out so often in the flats or anything that's even trivially downhill that you're going to be frustrated. So, between 34-20 and 32x22 is what I would say are your acceptable Leadville ranges.
And of course, you got the other small bits on the bike. We're going over the main parts, obviously, but what other little fine points do you put on your bike or take off of your bike when it comes to single speeding?
Oh, well, the wheel or the tires are both Maxxis Ardent Race. And I have those not just on this bike, but actually on all of my cross-country bikes. And I use those whether I'm training or racing. I'm a big believer in getting comfortable and using what you're used to. I have on all of my bikes Arundel mandible cages. Those hold on to bottles when other cages eject them. So I love those. And I still have a Banjo Brothers seat bag. They aren't sponsoring us this year, but I still love the Banjo Brothers seat bag. And one of their little bags will hold 2 Tubolito tubes, those bright orange, very minimalistic, very expensive spare tubes, a couple of 20-gram CO2 canisters, a Silca tire lever, because the Silca tire levers really are awesome. You can just get tires on easier and off easier than you can with anything else, and a very small multi-tool.
Mm-hmm. Do you make a point of carrying anything special when riding any special tool or anything when you're riding single speed?
No, I have a chain breaker, and that is good to have. But honestly, I've not broken a chain in a long time, and my chain fixing skills are pretty weak. And to be honest, I am not sure. I'm thinking about this right now. I'm not sure if I had a broken chain, would I be able to move the eccentric bottom bracket enough that having once removed the busted link, would I have enough? Would I be able to reattach the chain? I'm not sure. Do you know? I think maybe I need to start carrying an extra link, is what I'm thinking.
Well, yeah, or at least experimenting with that. At least figuring out, can I loosen my concentric bottom bracket and move things around enough if I were to lose a link, or do I need to carry extra chain with me so I can add a piece in that gets broken away? Again, then it gets a little dicey because then you're suddenly relying on more add-in parts, not just a quick link, but other add-in parts as you're finishing a race like Leadville. So definitely worth something sorting out, I would think, before you headed into a large, hard event like the Leadville Trail 2021 Leadville Trail 100.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Something to think about. Yeah, I need to make sure that I am able to. Yeah, I need to go ahead and put in that bag an extra couple of links so that if I break a link And I don't think I will, but stuff happens, right? You got to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that right now I'm ready for that. So something to think about. And not just for single speeds, but for sure for any bike, right?
Sure. Well, we're going to want to get to single speeding at Leadville next.
Yeah.
And of course, though, fueling has got to be a big component of that.
Yeah, on a single speed, fueling is a bigger deal than a lot of people think. The fact is, it's a lot easier to skip fueling. And by easier, I mean it's something that you do to yourself. Because when you're on a geared bike, it's real easy to reach into your jersey pocket or, however, wherever you've got your fuel. But when you're on a single speed, your hands are on your bars a lot more often because anytime you're climbing, you need your hands. And anytime that you are on the flats, there's a good chance that you are standing up and rowing a lot more often. You just stand more often. And so it's trickier to find time to grab a gel or a bar when you're doing all that standing and rowing, like up the Columbine climb.
Yeah, that's been a problem in the past, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Back when I fueled with mostly solid foods and gels during the race, I would have, forgotten or neglected or reasoned myself out of needing to eat during the climbs because, hey, I'm pedaling right now, and that's the important thing to do. And then I've suffered later in the race. But this next year, 2021, I'm actually super excited to try using my USWE pack loaded with Martin 160 because I've been doing that in my training rides, and that has been working really, really well for me. I can tell you, Hadi, there's no faster and easier way to stay on top of your calories than to just get them, all of your calories by drinking a liter of water or with some Martin in it per hour. At race pace, that's just about exactly the amount of I drink anyways, about a liter per hour. And, with the 160 being in every half liter, that's 320 calories I'm getting per hour just by drinking.
Yeah, well, conventional wisdom might say use the 320 pack up, but you're saying 160.
Yeah, I'm using the 160. That's sort of been one of my findings in this weird in-between non-season that we've had here. I've experimented with a lot of different things, including the 320. And the 320, for me personally, just my palate, it says, that is just too strong and too thick feeling for me. And no knock on it. It's just not what I like. Since I don't like it, I find reasons to not use it. That's just how it is. The Martin 160, on the other hand, I can drink nonstop, like endlessly and over long efforts, and it doesn't bother me. The weight of the drink and the taste of the drink, basically they become unnoticed to me. So with a 2-liter bladder in my pack, that's 640 calories in my back, in my pack on my back. And all the fuel, all the hydration I need between aid stations for Leadville. It's all right there. I don't have to grab anything else. I just flip, swap packs and on I go. So it's going to be fast changes at the aid station and all the calories that I need just by being sure that I keep drinking, which I do naturally. So, I mean, I let the valve basically hang from the corner of my mouth, nurse it, and I am good for calories. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, this really is the year for Leadville racers to find what fuel and fueling techniques work for them. Then experiment, practice, and really get it dialed. We've said it so many times here, Fatty, Leadville is an eating contest disguised as a race.
Yeah, and it's becoming more of a drinking contest now for me. And whether it's an eating contest or a drinking contest for you, it's a fueling contest for sure. And the feed is the best source for figuring out how you're going to approach that contest. Gels, bars, fats, straight up liquid, hydrogels like Martin. The feed has it all. And they can give you great guidance on using all of it the way that you should.
Yep, this is what we love about the feed. Not only do they have all the nutrition you need, but they also have terrific advice on how to put it into action. Find the perfect mix for you and your workouts and get a 15% discount by going to thefeed.com/Leadville.
So, Hadi, let's talk about single speeds and Leadville, the race itself.
Okay, so let's begin with who should race Leadville on a single speed.
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. And I want to be clear that I would not encourage most people to use a single speed the first time that they race the Leadville 100, unless you're already pretty much a dedicated single speed rider and that's what you do. What I would encourage people to do is if you've been riding and doing a lot of climbing on a single speed for a whole season, at least a season, give it a try on a single speed. You will be amazed at how rewarding it is.
I guess a lot of folks will want to be able to quantify how much harder is it?
Who could say? It's some years it felt very hard and very bad to me, and I don't know if a single speed has had anything to do with it. My hardest year definitely was not on a single speed. I think regardless, single speeding is going to be at least a little bit slower than a geared bike. Although I will say, at least, using myself as a very small set of data, it's not much shorter or much slower. My fastest time ever in Leadville is 8 hours, 12 minutes. That's on a hardtail fast. It was actually with a XTR Di2 setup. My fastest single speed time is 8 hours and 23 minutes. That is only 11 minutes difference. So at my very best, the difference between geared and single speed, 10 minutes. Other people I've heard say, oh, it's about a half hour difference, in which case, maybe if I would have ridden gears that year, I would have got that magical sub 8. Honestly, I don't know. You can't say. But I will say that 8 hours and 23 minutes, even though I did not get on the podium with that time, there are people who are much, much faster than I am single speeding. It was a real standout moment for me. It was so hard, and I went at my very best. I think that it was probably my most efficient, most effective Leadville ever, with the greatest intensity. I would say it was probably my most rewarding finish ever. And there were fewer things that could break, right? You can't have a derailleur snap. You can't, there are just fewer things that can go wrong with a single speed. That's not a reason to race single speed. Bikes are good in general right now, but it is kind of a nice little bonus. And finally, other racers think single speeds are interesting. I don't even know how many times when I race on a single speed in Leadville, people call a hey single speeder or good job single speeder, and every little morale boost you can get on that course is worth a few seconds in time. It's your heart rate raises, your morale raises, and it is just a nice moment.
Or, hey, you're doing that on a single speed. That's why you're on a single speed. You go, yes, I am. I think that's how you said it.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, I won't even try to dodge the vanity aspect of it. It is kind of cool to be noticed for racing on a single speed.
So let's talk about the course specifically.
Yeah.
How is it different on a single speed?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'll walk through the course, and I won't go do the whole 3-hour version like we have if you look through the feed, but just sort of a quick walk through it. Starting from the starting line, of course, you're going downhill on pavement, and you're going to lose some places because you are going to spin out at practically any gearing that you have. However, it is worth spending some effort on that fast downhill pavement. And then on the dirt between the pavement and the base of St. Kevin's, that Jeep Road before you get to St. Kevin's, to move up some places, because the further back you are on St. Kevin's when you start, the worse of a time you're going to have on a single speed. Because on a single speed, doing that climb, you are either walking or you are going much faster than most people, because they, just by reflex almost, are going to a much lower gear than they really need to go to. People go to their granny on St. Kevin's and just kind of spin up gently and slowly, conserving effort, being smart, saving their energy for later in the day. On a single speed, you don't have that gentle granny gear. You either have to race up that thing or you've got to walk up it. So the further up you are where people are a little bit faster, the better the chance that you're going to be able to stay on your bike, and you will make up some time. Then, of course, you've got the pavement descent. On there, I've seen once or twice people trying to spin their single speeds, and it is the very definition of futile effort. You can't spin as fast as you're going to descend on that. So you may as well just relax, eat, drink, get caught up on your energy, because you have some climbing coming up, right? And that is Sugarloaf. And Hagerman's right before Sugarloaf. You are going to be doing some climbing. Now, Sugarloaf actually is, I think, worth noting, Hottie, because Sugarloaf is a good gauge if you can get out to Leadville a couple of days, a week before the race, for you to test yourself, the gearing that you have. If you have fresh legs and go up Sugarloaf, you should be able to power up that on your single speed gearing when you were fresh and not racing. And if you can't, maybe swap down a gear before race day. Sugarloaf is kind of like the test that I apply to myself, that I'm like, wow, I just about died, or I had to get off my bike when I was doing that. Go down a gear. Or if I flew up it or felt like I was even under geared some of the time, I use that to kind of just gauge myself. Sugarloaf is just kind of your good sweet spot gauge of how you're going to do. Then Columbine. Until you get to the goat trail, I would say Columbine is like single speeders paradise. It is where you're going to pass 50 to 100 people. And I don't, well, I might be exaggerating a little, but maybe not a ton. It's an iconic part of the course. And because you are unable to go to a very low gear, you're going to move forward in the race. Now, once you get to the goat trail, you're going to have to get off your bike a little bit sooner. And I would make the argument that getting off your bike a little bit sooner is actually good for you, because you are not going to be going very fast, and you're going to be burning matches at a pretty fast rate anytime you are on the goat trail on your bike. If you are not going to win, that's a good place to get off and do a little bit of walking anyway. On a single speed, there's no question you're going to be getting off and doing some walking, so you don't have to, beat yourself up about.
So it sounds like you use Sugarloaf as your gearing benchmark, because
I do.
It's just a given that the goat trail is a walking zone. In fact, it's going to be slightly earlier than if you were on a geared bike. So that's the benchmark, Sugarloaf.
And then when once you finish Columbine and you're heading back down to Twin Lakes Dam inbound, frankly, that's bad for anyone. That's just a hard time of the race, but it is double bad for single speeders. So if you're on a single speed, plan to not be having a great time on that stretch. Mile 60 to, is it mile 70? Is that about right? Yeah, I think it is. Between Twin Lakes Dam and Pipeline inbound, it's just, you are spun out a lot of the time. You are tired. It is rough. It is the time when you're going to wish that you would have brought a geared bike. And then Powerline. For one thing, it's not even a question. I don't know if any single speeder has ever successfully climbed the Powerline, and this has nothing to do with whether it's been graded or not. It is just an incredibly steep climb. You're very likely going to walk that, but the rest of Powerline, if you still have the energy, is rideable on a single speed. I've done it. The time that I did that 823 in Leadville, I rode everything except for that first very steep pitch in Powerline on the single speed without putting a foot down. It was not easy, but it was pretty rewarding to have done it.
And in fact, you passed me on the Powerline once on the single speed. I'll never. It was either 2011 or 2013. I can't remember which year, but
did I say hi?
I acknowledged you because I probably had seen you in the movie, and I knew you were a single speeder, and I'm sure you had a jersey on. And I think you did acknowledge me. I said something, and you said something back, and then you kept going. I'm like, man, he's just going to power this thing. So, yes, you can do well. And it's interesting what you're saying here is that, one of the good feelings people should draw about single speeding is that you'll be passing people. Like, it's not like you're going to spend the whole day going backwards. You will pass people based on the fact that just to turn over the gear, you're going to be covering more ground. You're going to have more gear inches just by turning over the gear than other folks in their lowest gear going up some of these steepest climbs. You're just bound to go past them. And as long as you can turn over the gear, you will be passing people.
It is true. You will also, and you have to be comfortable with this notion, you will be passed by people. And that is on the sections that are a very, any kind of downhill, right? Where people can put it into their big ring, their big gear, and just rail, you're going to be spun out. And so, as people do that, and or when you're on the pavement after coming down power line early in the ride, and people are signaling that you should jump on the train, you just have to laugh and wave. There's no way you're going to be able to hang with them at that point. So yeah, you got to be comfortable with what's good and what's not.
Yeah, the whole day must be filled with these segments where you are passing somebody and then they pass you, and this back and forth. Like, you probably see the same people for much of the day.
Ton of leapfrogging, and I love that personally. I love seeing the same people. You start developing a rapport, and there starts being a little bit of joking. Hey, see you soon, that kind of thing. And when you pass someone, you're going to see them again on the next descent. It's one of the things I love about Leadville. There's competition, but there's also a lot of support between racers. Whether you're on a single speed or not.
All right, get us home on this thing, on this one gear monster.
Okay, so after power line, of course, there's nothing special or different about coming down Sugarloaf. Hagerman's, you're going to be spun out really on almost anything, although you're going to spin out a lot sooner on a single speed than you would be on a geared bike. The McQueen pavement is actually one of the places I pass more people on than anywhere else, because there is a mental component to being on that pavement late in the day. You're tired. It is very tempting to just go into the granny gear of dejection if you have gears and just sort of spin very slowly up that mountain. Single speeders can't do that. You're either attacking or you're walking, and you don't want to walk pavement. So you attack on that thing and know that once you get to the top of Carter, the half mile after the end of that pavement, you are home free. Then there's you maybe lose a couple of places in the road at the bottom of St. Kevin's, and getting to the boulevard. It is a real almost nightmare of the feeling of being spun out. And then there's a boulevard. It is a hard climb, but it is well suited to single speeds, and the grade is great for picking up some of those people who passed you in the gutter. And then you were home free. There's the red carpet. There's the finish line tape. There's Merrily, and you've done the race on a single speed. It's pretty incredible. And
do you get a special call out from the announcer? Sometimes they do notice, I think. Yeah, I've been there. They do notice.
They do. They notice it. Honestly, if you hear that, then you've got better hearing than me. All I hear is blood in my ears. So... but it's a fantastic feeling. You can tell I love the single speeding. The race is incredible no matter what. But if you have if you're looking for a new challenge, or you are the kind of person who loves low cadence racing, give it a try on a single speed.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm convinced. I mean, I don't know that I'll be able to line up at Leadville again, but I don't know about 100 miles on a single speed. But certainly I'd like to do something with my little 9 or Sur 9 out there and give that a go, and turn that into something one-geared, in the one-geared realm. Does sound like some fun and a good way to find new life for not only your bike, but for biking in general. Just a new element to add to what you're doing.
I'm going to guarantee, try out single speeding, and you're going to find a whole new, I guess, mountain biking kind of fun. That's my number one thing for this.
Cool. Well, let's wrap up Season 3, Episode 19 of the Leadville Podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like our little show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also share it with your other cycling friends, and support our sponsors, please. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible. Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch. That's also where you can find a link to our Slack workspace and jump into our ongoing conversation.
Yep, it's definitely where the Leadville 100 super nerds and a few single speeders go to hang.
Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the 2021 starting line.
On a bright orange Niner Air 9 RDO, single speed.
High five on the way up. And as always in that mix, Matt Crowley from Draper, Utah, writing, get this, a single speed, ladies and gentlemen.